I want to welcome everybody. This is the Behavioral Health Webinar Series. My name is Kate Trams, and today we have Michaela Gray presenting on the essential building blocks for trauma-informed programs in Indian country. This training series is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. We are part of the ATTC network shown in the map here on this slide, and this also includes 10 regional centers, 5 international centers, a network coordinating office, and the National Hispanic and Latino ATTC. In the next couple of days, we will send out a follow-up email to everyone who attended, which will include a link to the recording, handouts of the slides, and a CEU request form. Our center is a NADAC certified educational provider, and we'd be happy to provide you with CEUs. I do want to say normally we refer to a $15 fee once annually for all of our webinars that you'd like to attend, but right now, because we can't easily get to our mail, we're not worried about the $15 fee. So if you do want to request CEUs, you can submit those by email, and we'll send you a CEU certificate. Immediately following today's webinar, you will be redirected to our GIPR evaluation. The survey takes just a few minutes to complete and asks you about the satisfaction with the event. This feedback is critical to our future work, and we value your opinion and would greatly appreciate your time in sharing your thoughts with us. You will be muted for the duration of this webinar, so please use the chat pod to share your questions and comments, and we'll address the questions at appropriate points during the presentation. I want to introduce our speaker today. We have Michaela Gray here. Michaela has been one of our major consultants for many years now, and she's the former deputy director of the National Native American AIDS Prevention Center in Denver, Colorado. And since 2016, she's worked for Covert as a clinical research associate monitoring clinical trials throughout the Western U.S. She's been working with us for a number of years, as I mentioned, and she was a part of our curriculum committee for the Native LGBTQ and Two-Spirit curriculum in its first edition, and she's also a graduate of our 2015-2016 Leadership Academy. So we're so grateful to have Michaela be a part of our team and one of our wonderful consultants, and I want to pass things over to her at this time. I'm going to just pull up your slides here.
Great. Okay, great. Sounds good. Thank you and welcome everybody to this webinar. We really appreciate your time and your energy and your efforts here. Just want to say as a general disclaimer to everybody, this is not directed as, to bash anybody or to denigrate anybody. Definitely here to say thank you and thank you for all your work out there. I don't know if you're in Indian country or beyond, but definitely we definitely appreciate your efforts there as well. And somebody who is a transgender person, transgender male to female, I definitely applaud your efforts as well too, because without you, we wouldn't have the critical care and the critical elements that we definitely need in this part of the world. And yeah, so I am presenting essential building blocks for trauma-informed programs in Indian country. It's going to be with a focus more towards LGBTQ two-spirit populations, but again, it's widely applicable to other populations as well too. So please don't think just because this is more LGBTQ specific that it's not relevant for other people or other populations as well. It definitely has wide applications to all folks in Indian country. I am from the Navajo Nation, and I'm currently living in Denver, Colorado, but have my roots and family members in Church Rock, New Mexico. So definitely have been on the reservations, have access to health care there, lived on the reservation, hauled water, had no electricity, so on and so forth. Okay, but now I'm living in the wonderful situation of Denver. Just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge what's going on in the world today. We've got the effects and the ravages of COVID-19 in our worlds, in our cities, our families, our relatives. Just want to say that we are definitely thinking and praying for those individuals and have those on our minds at the time. So definitely sending our thoughts and prayers out to you as well for those who have been impacted by that. I know that Navajo Nation has seen their fair share of numbers and deaths and cases and such, but just wanted to let you know that we in the cities and beyond definitely are thinking of you. And also for those who are in the midst of the protests and the riots and such, definitely standing in solidarity with you and sending prayers of support, as well as just acknowledging that as well. And events leading up to this probably were probably traumatic events that led up to this. And even after this, the trauma will still be happening hereafter as well. So it's going to be a big, interesting situation hereafter as all of this subsides and all of this takes a different life of its own, perhaps. And perhaps we are hoping for the change. We're hoping for widespread efforts to positively come from this. Okay, so learning objectives. And this is just not something that's going to be set in stone, but also it's just kind of things to kind of lead us through this discussion. I put leaning objectives, not learning objectives. Forgive my misspelling there. Describe the challenges to safety Native LGBTQ two-spirit individuals may encounter in organizations and with individual practice. Recognize strategies to mitigate client risk when interacting with organizations and practitioners. Describe action steps to promote Native LGBTQ two-spirit safety in organizations. And describe the components of trauma-informed approach. What are they? So it was described to me in the presentation or a TED Talk I saw a couple days ago. Trauma-informed approach is the way to be informed because all of us have been impacted by some way, shape, or form by trauma. And typically trauma has started with words that adversely affected us and were exacerbated by experiences. So I myself have experienced it. I'm sure those in the audience here have experienced it as well too. We could definitely go in and talk about all that, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. We definitely want to, so what I'm going to do with this presentation is I'm going to talk about the negatives at first, but then follow it up with the positives. So let's continue this discussion. And I will pay attention to the questions after the session, so if I don't get to them, please don't hesitate to email them to me. I put them at the end of my presentation. I just want to be able to go through the presentation, just kind of get a feel for it, and then address some of the questions hereafter. So please, if you could delay that with me, that'd be great. So my healthcare visit. This is what I look like, if you don't already know. I had a healthcare visit in Denver in early February 2020, and I was introduced to a new provider, nurse practitioner, and didn't have a great exchange, unfortunately. This provider was very dictatorial, told me, this is your health issue, this is what you should do with it. This is what we're going to do today, this is what we're going to, this is the blood we're going to draw. I mean, just right into it. The initial greeting that we had were, oh, I know you, I've met you before. I don't remember meeting this person whatsoever. I know I may look like a familiar face to this person, but did not have any other types of exchanges with that. Just dove right into it. There was a low level of engagement. There was no formal greeting. There was nothing. And then finally, after giving me the whole spiel, finally said to me, oh, what are you here for again? I was there for an injection of sorts. It was a second in a series of 3, I believe. Finally addressed that and asked for that information. And when I asked this individual, how many years have you been dealing with transgender individuals? Well, I've been in practice 3 years, so there you have it. Okay. Another question I posed was, so I'm interested in possibly obtaining a prescription for such and such. Can you please call it into my pharmacy? No, that would be my health. That would be my license on the line there. I won't do that. You're not taking that medication. It's not part of your current portfolio. I'm not going to do that. You're going to have to come in for a visit. I said, oh, okay, all right. So the end result was I said to her, this is not going to work. I need another practitioner. I need somebody else. Who else can I see at the next visit because I'm not going to see you. I don't understand what the problem is, she says to me. And I say, well, I don't appreciate the curt responses. Nowhere in this are we talking about active engagement with me as your patient. Nowhere in this are we talking about, how can we do this together type of thing. You're just telling me what to do. I'm not used to that kind of healthcare exchange. I'm here for a service. I'm here to get information about what I'm doing. And I don't even feel comfortable bringing my questions and my concerns to you because of how this entire exchange is not happening. So I need another provider. And I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. Therefore, we'll have to just reschedule for a different time. So I felt powerlessness. I felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like there was no safety there, no safety enough to say I have these concerns about my body, I have these concerns about my symptoms. I didn't even have any of those addressed, so the entire visit was for naught. I should have just gone there, got my injection, and walked right out for all I could have done instead of having this awkward exchange. So there's one example. So an activity that could possibly lead into, active discourse with people and with the people you're interacting with, perhaps even doing it with your staff and such, maybe doing it as, colleagues together is one thing. What are the symbols of survival? You can draw them or list them. And I can think of 3 right now, but maybe, as you're sitting in back of your desk, think of 3 of them. And write them down or draw them or do what you need to do. Number 2, what does skepticism is survival, what does it mean to you? And then when you answer that, what do you think how do you think that means, or what do you think that means to the people you are serving? That's another question. And then another one is, what are ways Native LGBTQ Two-Spirit persons experience violence on individual and systemic levels? And again, it's not just that particular population. It could be any population. So I think a lot of us have had to rely on skepticism, especially when entering new jobs, new educational experiences, new relationships, new friendships, what have you, in order to get to the next stage, in order to be able to kind of utilize as a defense mechanism, if you will, to kind of shield you, because you're already covering some traumas that you may have experienced, and you don't readily want to let those out, as it were, when you're interacting with a new experience. You want to kind of, in my culture, you say, and I think a lot of other Native cultures, you go into a new situation in a good way. You go into a new relationship in a good way. You go into a new living environment in a good way, because hopefully you've had an opportunity at some point to start dealing with your trauma, start dealing with that. So my So my mechanisms of survival are these two little ladies. They're my nieces, and when I think of survival, when I think of hope, when I think of reasons to continue into as a transgender person, as their auntie, as somebody they can look up to, I think of them as my mechanisms of survival, and they're the reasons why I do the work that I do. I interact with Native culture and my own culture. I stay true to it. So, I'm one example of of using family as a motivator for that particular method. And I know that you all have different types of things that you can draw upon. But just to share that these are my one of my examples. Another one I was thinking about was pictures of home, whether they may be landscapes from home or whether they may be my mom's home back on the reservation. That's another example too that I draw upon when I think about survival. And the third one I was thinking about was like a road, a dirt road. And as we know, those of us who grew up in rural areas know that dirt roads are unpredictable. They can be smooth in some places. They can be dry. They can be wet. They can be rutted. They can be whatever. But it's the road to take to get to the next destination, to get to the next goal, to get to the next hill. Anyway, that's what I was drawing upon when I was thinking about those 3 things of survival. Okay, so let's just discuss some brief common organizational challenges. And so they are definitely widespread. We definitely know that in Indian country, organizations, programs have different challenges. And some of those are, of course, like distance. Like, how do your people get to your particular clinic? Is there an issue with gas? Is there an issue with transport? Number two, I think I have a relative who works in that organization? That's another challenge. How do you get from being on the outside, knowing your relative works there, to being a patient in there behind closed doors and having potentially that particular friend, family member, ex, if you will, have access to your private information? Number three, it could be we just don't know. People don't know sometimes, like that particular building has those services and they have these counselors and whatnot. Now, it could be years before people finally realize, oh, that's where you go for that service. And number four, somebody who might have had a bad experience there. Somebody who knows that, oh yeah, I've been there before, had a provider, had an exchange with a frontline staff. It was not good. Did not happen very well. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. But I think those are primary examples of things that happen in Indian country. Moving on a little bit, ways that organizations may operate from an oppression framework. So, and I think we touched upon this in my earlier example. Lack of connections with specialized providers. Sometimes if you're in a rural area, even if you're in an urban area, you don't have those connections. You're too new. You as a provider might be there as a new provider. And so being able to figure out who is in the milieu there, who is in the network there, could possibly be your ally, could possibly help you in reaching what you need to do. For example, hormone care for those of us who are transgender, mental health and substance abuse counseling. Do we know those individuals? If you're a new person on the block, how do you know who is supposed to be there? And sometimes those individuals have changed. Some of those individuals have gone through changes and may have closed or whatever. Inability to recruit and retain buy-in for practitioners. Yeah, we know this all too well. Indian country is riddled with these problems. Indian Health Service, definitely. You build a rapport with a certain provider, and you can only rely on them to be there for that 1 year, maybe even 2 years. Maybe some of us have asked them explicitly, okay, you're the new doctor, you're the new nurse practitioner, you're the new PA, you're the new dentist, you're the new counselor. How long are you going to be here? And then that could possibly set the tone for whether or not that person even comes back. Lack of informed treatment modalities. We constantly kind of hear some things to the grapevine like, yeah, those people don't utilize the most up-to-date information. I know they talk about trauma in other places. I know I've heard it in a discussion somewhere, but here it's not talked about. Lack of appropriate training. Policy. Do we have policies posted widespread throughout the clinic saying, if you have somebody who possibly breached your confidentiality, this is the process by which you can do it. And if you don't have it posted anywhere, do people know that that's even a possibility there with that particular office? Difficulty in handling organizational mistakes. Again, if you're an organization that has had a bad reputation, if you're a program that's had a bad reputation in the past, it might be all the more difficult to overcome that. Okay, so unsafe practitioner practices. And again, this is drawing upon my previous experience, but also from this guideline that I also came across. So types of harm, covert and overt, with this specifically relating to Native LGBTQ individuals. What are the definitions of covert and overt? Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines covert as not openly shown, not openly engaged in. And then furthermore, the definition for overt is, the definition of overt is open to view, manifested, everybody can see it. So we all know, and then if you don't, this also applies to other populations, that Native LGBTQ individuals experience higher rates of homelessness, higher rates of food insecurity, higher rates of unemployment and underemployment, and then thereby also lower rates of medical care. So for Native LGBTQ individuals, what do you think, or what do you think that suggests about clients' primary needs? They're probably going to come in for services for being homeless and trying to get out of homelessness, trying to find food or find a way to get food, trying to find a place to help employ them, whether it's in the high technically savvy jobs or those that they're not. medical care. All of us, those of us who are transgender, definitely love accessing services that are oriented towards HIV and STI prevention, but also those that will give us access to hormones and hormone care and all that surrounding care. So here's a little pictorial representation of covert versus overt homophobia. And so homophobia, as we know, is just as another term that we've all probably been aware of. But homophobia, and can't see much of this. Oh goodness, okay, here we go. As we stated before, overt homophobia is publicly seen. It's definitely demonstrated, and this could be in all sorts of sectors of our society. It could be between friends, it could be in professional setting, it could be in school, it could be in the classroom, between teachers. It's all over, but this is typically socially unacceptable homophobic behavior. Jokes, hate crimes, slurs. Some concrete examples of covert homophobia are tokenism. Oh, that person's gay, so they can speak for all the gays that we are probably going to encounter. Or that person is trans, that person will definitely speak for everybody that falls under the umbrella. Microaggressions like, you're too pretty to be a lesbian. Or when one of my former mental health providers looked me up and down and said, yeah, you look like a pretty good woman. So, okay. Hiring discrimination. Let's see here. Lack of LGBTQ representation in politics and in the media. So I just want to state that with that, yeah, we have some of that going on now. But typically, a lot of those individuals don't actively represent our communities, especially those in native country. So we definitely need more representation. We definitely need more people on that spotlight. And social exclusion, so we have other examples there as well too. Organizational structures. Just want to shed light on some of the organizational structures. I know that we all have a hierarchy typically. We all have different levels of reporting. We have different sectors. This is just one example of that. But in my mind, I think of most organizations and most groups as very circuitous. And so you have the clients, the patients that should be at the center of all operations and the reasons why this entire organization exists. So that's kind of, for me, seems like it's more like the point of origin, if you will, the circle of origin. And from that radiates out the direct connection and interaction with the frontline staff. And then those frontlines, and then they can also interact and have a direct relationship with the providers, and then with the administrators. And everybody's interrelated. Everybody talks to each other. The actions of one directly impact another. And so it's definitely something that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about our organizational structures, and maybe even employing that when we start speaking about possible change or possible ways of reframing our mindset about this. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the harm in which some practitioners and maybe even some program officials may inflict harm upon folks who are enduring trauma, folks who have experienced it. Unchecked power dynamics. And this is a clear example of what happened in my interaction with my new healthcare provider. Cultural imperialism. And that's a big flashy term for just stating that individual, whether it's overt, definitely seen, witnessed, directly stated to me, or covert, under the table, not quite seen, not explicitly stated, imposing cultural values on the less powerful. Negative behavior, again, can result from unchecked power dynamics. Exhibiting microaggressions, exhibiting reverse emotional labor. So in my exchange with the healthcare provider, I definitely felt like I was trying, instead of having this person help me, I was trying to figure out exactly why this person was guarded and walled off, and why there was no connection, why there was no reaching out. Why didn't she walk into the room and say, hello, how are you? Good to see you again. I understand that I'm inheriting you from so-and-so. I'm glad to be your provider. What can I do for you today? No, it went right into what needed to be done, what the needs, what the deficiencies were, how to supplement those deficiencies. Not a good exchange. Just stating that there's a different way to operate. And then furthermore, internalized bias. If you have practitioners who have this, it's typically exhibited in personal values and knowledge. Can you help me with this? I can't see what it's here. Provider attempts to push religion and or work ethic on clients. So it's just kind of, instead of checking your own internalized bias towards a person, whoever you're interacting with in that particular instance, checking at the door, so to speak, and making that not part of the discussion, not part of what you're doing there, it's being put on your patient, on your client, using isms. Personal beliefs regarding root causes. So, yeah, I mean, instead of utilizing informed approaches, instead of utilizing what happened to this person in order for this person to get there, you're relying on things that you've seen in textbooks and places that have no real application to what's going on in this Indian program, in this setting with medical providers. You're relying on your own personal experiences and beliefs to help describe what's going on here. Stereotyping and substance use stigma. Just some of the things about stereotyping, assumptions about gender presentations. Failing to ask about pronouns. Again, this is changing so rapidly. We definitely see a population now, and especially within the younger population, there's gender fluidity there that we just, it's not always so clear, cut, and dry. So asking individuals, how are you presenting? Or how are you, what name are you going by? Can I use he, she pronouns? If you don't like those pronouns, what pronouns can I use? And then immediately state, if I mess up, if I don't use the right pronouns, I apologize. I will definitely work on it for the next time that we're together. Making that person feel safe immediately. Okay? So if all that has happened, this has happened, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say if you want to make the slides a little bit bigger, there's a full screen button up at the top. That helps a little bit.
I see it now. Thank you. Yes, I got it. Okay, my old eyes cannot see this very much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, got it. Okay, so as we saw in my previous example, when we had an unchecked power dynamic between myself and the provider, exhibiting internalized bias, I automatically went on the defense. I resisted. I didn't feel safe. I didn't want to take the advice. I didn't want to get the blood drawn. So, that can possibly easily and quickly escalate in that particular example. If that happens in your program, or that happens in your interaction with your client, your provider, it definitely can result in this. And I have other, little examples down below, of course, but after a while, and sometimes on the flip side, resistance of the opposite side of flip side, resistance is exhaustion. Just not wanting to, our exhaustion has everything to do with micro insults. After a while, some individuals just kind of fail to be responsive anymore, don't want to engage in the program and what you're putting out there. Especially if at the front your power dynamic is there, you're exhibiting internalized bias, you're exhibiting substance abuse stigma and other things. And these are just again, these are just these are examples. So, okay, let's just talk briefly about trauma. There are three E's of trauma: events, experiences, effects. And again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Everybody has a different definition of trauma. Everybody has a different way of looking at it, and these are just suggestions and such that were drawn from a guide that I came across. Events. These events could be severe threats or severe actualized events. They could be a single event. It could be repeated. It could be described as physical harm inflicted on a person, sexual harm inflicted on a person, psychological harm. It could be all three of them. And then neglect. experience, or circumstance. Individual experience determines if event is traumatic. And again, I kind of have I think even at the outset, even at the word, the initial part of that discussion, the initial words that are inflicted upon you, you're a sissy, you're more effeminate, I want to use the F word, or you're a faggot. Those are some of the things, those are the microaggressions. I think for myself, in my opinion, it starts from the initial negative words that came at me when I was younger. Based upon individual labels, assigns meaning to, and an interference with harmony. Harmony of the physical, harmony of the spiritual, harmony of the mental and the emotional. There's a power dynamic that is automatically set up between the individual, the event, or the person. If the person who is inflicting the words on you, that experience can be described as, there's a power dynamic there. They're exhibiting their power by calling you those names. They're exhibiting their power by, talking down to you and not actively engaging you. They leave the person asking, why me? Leaves the person asking or feeling powerlessness and questioning, what happened? Am I safe here? Is this person trustworthy? Is this person like me as a Native person? Is this person like me fundamentally as, a transgender person? And then humiliation, guilt, shame, betrayal, silencing shape the experience. So I'm on the flip side. I'm not a silent person typically, so I definitely exhibited my disdain for the experience. But other people don't react the same way. Other people might have just fell silent and just fell in line and just left. But again, still feeling the ramifications, the results of that negative experience. Furthermore, trauma experience is also impacted by the following range of cultural factors: availability of social supports, isolation versus family support, developmental stage of individual. That's definitely, especially if somebody who's so young that has these negative things put on them, has these negative words thrown at them as a young person, that really starts impacting them into the future. And we all know this. We've all probably experienced some version of this as well, and we see it in the people that we're interacting with. So instead of asking and putting your own beliefs and putting your own internalized bias on these individuals, start asking yourself the question, what happened to this person in order for them to be at this stage now? Being mindful of your words, being mindful of your actions, being mindful of the way you interact, whether it's with pronouns, being mindful of stereotypes, just being enabled and being adaptable to the change. So let me continue further with this. Okay. And again, the effects, long-lasting adverse effects. They may occur immediately or delayed between days to years, and the duration of these effects varies. The connection between event and effect may not be realized. So, and again, I just want to also state here that it's intergenerational as well, too. And we have multiple examples of how we're still being, as Native people, we're still being impacted, and we still carry the trauma of generations previous to ours. Now the question is, how do we deal with the trauma? How do we deal with those now in this day and age, since we have a little more information? And our approach may not always be fail-safe. We may not always have the best examples. We may not have always the best answers for it, but it's definitely worth asking, definitely worth delving into and utilizing cultural practices in order to help heal some of those things. So this is the reason why we're all here, key steps in establishing trauma-informed approach. Again, these are just suggestions. You may be already implementing these changes, and I applaud you for that. And if you are, it's going to be a continual process. And if you're not, don't shy away from it. Think of ways, even if you do it stepwise fashion, slowly but surely, I think we all would see a marked difference in the way we interact with programs on and off the reservation. So the key principles of the trauma-informed approach include safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice, and choice, culture, historical, and gender issues. Those are all parts of the key principles of utilizing a trauma-informed approach in your programs. Again, and you might already have a lot of this down pat, and so definitely I applaud you for that. And if you're not, please consider employing or implementing some of these practices. So we're talking about safety, and again, I alluded to it before. Going into an environment when you're with your healthcare provider or your mental health care provider, or when you're accessing a service, being able to feel safe, physically safe as well as psychologically, and maybe even emotionally safe. Key consideration: safety is defined by those served is a priority. Let me say this again. Safety is defined by those served as a priority, making those individuals feel that, okay, I am here for you. I need to know how to help you. What can we do together? How can we do this as a team, as opposed to you need to do this, you have that deficiency, medicate it with this, do that, do this. Utilizing the approach as if you will, a community, a support, a peer support. Safety in the environment, safety in the services provided. Trustworthiness and transparency. Transparency in organizational operations, and that's why we say if there's a grievance policy, if somebody is feeling that their privacy has been violated, their confidentiality has been breached, that those policies are made known to the people who are that you're serving. Ultimate result, you build and maintain trust with clients, family members, and staff even. So if you're a staff member working in such an organization, you know that previously confidentiality and such private health information, gossip has not been punished, but knowing now that those things are taken seriously, that the current enforcement is such and such, that you as a staff member may feel a little more secure in that environment. I know I would. Peer support. And this is, I'm just stating that for those who have been through it and who have been through the program steps that you have implemented and you're showcasing there in your communities and your programs and your healthcare institutions, that utilizing their voice, utilizing their network and their experience to help further your operations may also only benefit you. Peer support and mutual self-help promotes safety. It promotes hope, trust building, enhancing collaboration, utilizing stories and experiences to promote recovery and healing. Peers equal trauma survivors, family members, caregivers. So, as somebody who's a transgender individual, I feel that, when applicable, when available, perhaps utilizing a transgender person in your group to help establish this peer support. It could be a staff member who's working with other staff. It could be somebody who is a client / a patient that you're serving to serve and to formulate a peer support group. So just utilizing those individuals there for their expertise and such, but being careful not to culturally appropriate them or tokenize them, but to make them feel that what they're doing is beneficial to what's going on here, that you're utilizing their experiences hopefully to help inform their practices going on. Collaboration, mutuality, I touched on this earlier, establishing a rapport, establishing a safe environment where you can actually state that I'm here for you. How can we do this together? How can we make this about you and I as opposed to just you doing it? You have the problem. You need to fix it. Being able to do it as a team effort. And you might have to do a little more saging. You might have to go back and do that on your own if you haven't already done it, maybe as a group, maybe as a team. Going back to cultural practices, utilizing prayer, utilizing whatever methods you can in order to get to that stage where you're just able to clear your mind and get ready for the next person. And just realize that everyone has a role in this trauma-informed approach. It's not, just because the janitor does the cleaning, frontline staff only do the filing and are answering telephones. Those individuals are also key to what's going on with the providers and the administrators as well. So everybody in this particular, and also the volunteers. Empowerment, voice, and choice. I definitely believe in this. Experiences and strengths are recognized and used as building blocks. Key trauma-informed organization characteristics. Of course, they exhibit the following: belief in prioritizing the people served. We said this over and over again. Belief in resilience, belief in the ability of people, communities, and organizations to hail and promote recovery. Definitely a key aspect of this. Trauma may be the commonality or unifying aspect for those who run the organization, those who provide the services, and those who come from services. And I'm just stating that, those of us from Indian country and even beyond, we've all experienced trauma in some way, shape, or form. It's not just LGBTQ individuals, it's everybody. We've all had some experience with that. And perhaps being able to draw upon those previous experiences will only help you grow stronger and also help you maybe humanize the experience with, handling patient records or dealing with a new patient, interacting with other providers and such. Another aspect, of course, provide empowerment for staff and clients alike. You, of course, drawing upon empowerment, voice, and choice. Client-supported with shared decision-making, goal setting, establish a plan of action. Definitely a key. I think it's definitely really key, and also healthcare and patient relationships. Assists in cultivating self-advocacy skills. Staff as facilitators of recovery. So these are all just examples that you can utilize to help in your trauma-informed approach. Cultural, historical, and gender issues. Organizations move beyond cultural biases and stereotypes. Again, like I said before, be adaptable to change. Be ready for it. Utilize and employ what's going on in the culture there, what's happening there in the culture. How could that positively influence your program? Organizations offering the following services: access to gender-responsive services. Instead of just offering women's groups, maybe even like a two-spirit group, or maybe an LGBT group, or whomever. But being also having providers who are really on the know about how to provide services for these individuals. Respect for cultural traditions and connections. Incorporates policies, standard operating procedures, and processes that meet cultural, racial, and/or ethnic needs of the population served. So again, utilizing your knowledge about what's happening in the community and of the community there. Okay, so final considerations. There are 6 principles of trauma-informed approach: safety, trustworthiness, and transparency, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, cultural issues. Demonstrate adherence rather than checklists. Don't see this as a checklist, marking it off. I mean, think about how it can be, what's realistic for your organization, what's realistic for your program. How can you possibly slow the tide and get this, incorporated into your programming and such, and maybe even make it part of your mission, perhaps. Principles are applicable to a wide variety of organizations and promote linkage to recovery and resilience. So I just wanted to state that when I had my other, I don't know if I already addressed this, but when I had my other healthcare provider, it was definitely a conversation. We definitely had a mutual understanding about what we could do together. And so with that, it was just, it was a much easier type of healthcare exchange, and it really was an exchange. So implementation, this is just kind of in brief. Change is required at multiple levels, as we know. Alignment with the 6 principles previously described, if you can possibly do that, if it's realistic for your programs. Evolving process and a good starting point. It's just, and again, being adaptable to change, just knowing that it's not always going to be the first implementation may not go on successfully. It may take some time. Examine how this approach may benefit stakeholders like the people you're serving and the people behind the lines who are also providers as well, and administrators. Conduct trauma-informed organizational assessment. Is this something that is realistic, like I said? Is this something feasible for your group right now in change process? Implementation domains, as you see here, it's a huge, we're just talking about programs, organizations as a whole. The ones I highlighted, of course, are governance and leadership, policy, engagement and involvement, training and workforce development, and evaluation. And so I'm just going to go, and then you see these other ones as well too, as part of it. For the sake of time, I'm just moving past some of these quickly. Governance and leadership. Identify somebody who could be a champion or a definitive leader who's well-versed in this, or if they're not well-versed, who is willing to become well-versed in this, and who's going to help hold people accountable, who's got the ear of, if they're somebody who's maybe a provider or somebody who's not a provider, who's got the ear of the administration, and an administration who's open to dealing and open to change and open to making things better. Initiate and sustain trauma-informed approach. Lead and oversee changes/work, and to include peer voices in this entire process. It's going to be a big feat. It's going to take years, or not. I don't know how people are, how fast change moves. I know Indian country is probably a little slower than most other places, but I definitely think it's feasible. Policy, establish written policies and procedures. I know I said this before, that include trauma-informed approach essential to the mission. Ensure trauma-informed approach is hardwired in the daily operation. So it just can't be intermittent. It can't just be influencing one aspect and not the other. It's really got to be an interrelated type of environment. People who are doing this daily have got to be vested in it as well too. So definitely something that we need to put out there to policies that can help safeguard individuals and help only promote trust and transparency. Engagement and involvement. Who's engaged? Those are typically the people in recovery. Those are typically the trauma survivors, family members, caregivers, spouses. Significant involvement at every level of the organizational function. Again, we're probably only preaching to the choir here with all of this, but and also staff members I wanted to include there. Everybody's got to be engaged. Everybody's got to be in the same level of engagement here. Ongoing training must be ongoing. There's a different theory. There's a different way of looking at it. There's different approaches. Perhaps even getting included within a network that allows for that cross-pollination between groups and organizations. For human resources, ensure trauma-informed principles incorporated into hiring, into staff evaluation, supervision, and procedures. It's not about, it's asking a question, how did this person get here? What happened previously that, that only, and knowing that could possibly help, you put that person into a position that's, a little more low stress or higher stress because they're dealing with it actively and they're doing well dealing with it. Or that, because of such and such an event that happened in their life, they're not able to perform at what they used to. Therefore, we'll keep them on staff and we'll do this instead of reprimanding them and publicly humiliating them. Just things to consider. Evaluation, again, this just goes to saying that as you evaluate patients, as you employ evaluation practices from patients about your organization or from clients about the organization, it's definitely something to ask. So here are some example questions. How does the perspective of people who have experienced trauma inform the agency? What processes are in place to solicit feedback from people? What measures or indicators are used to assess organizational progress? These are hard questions sometimes to ask. How are we doing? What can we do more? What are we doing best at? What are we not doing so best at? How are we utilizing and incorporating the voice of people that we're serving? How do we, do we need more? Do we need less? Or it's just this not feasible right now for us because we're so new or because of whatever factors that are out there. So to wrap it all up, I'm running out of time here, so I just wanted to make sure I was cognizant of that. Developing trauma-informed approach requires change at multiple levels. Just wanted to say that. And it may happen all at the same time. It may happen at your own pace. But it's definitely, these are the key features to keep in mind when approaching this. And if you're in the midst of it and you need a little more information, these are considerations to have as well as you're going through it. There are 10 implementation domains. Please don't treat this as a checklist. I know it might be a little difficult because some of us are really linear thinkers, and we've been away from Indian country for a bit in a day, but it is not meant to be a checklist. intent is to cross-pollinate the 6 principles with trauma-specific content. So again, cross-pollination. And I think once you have the key basic building blocks of this, you can definitely, I want to say it's a little loose in interpretation. It's about making it work for your population. It's about taking maybe some of those 10 implementation domains. Maybe you only need to do it in 2. Maybe with 6 principles, you only activate 3 of them, or maybe 1 of them, and emphasize those and see how the others fall into place there. So it's definitely, this was proposed by a number of contributors, and I wanted to give credit to those individuals as well. This is from SAMHSA. It was published in July 2014. It's called the SAMHSA's Concept of Trauma and Guidance for Trauma-Informed Approach. Again, this is this is informed by multiple individuals who they drew examples upon, but again, I would definitely welcome individuals who have other perspectives about this as well and other feedback about this. So if you have any other questions or concerns, you can reach me at this email address. Again, this is Michaela Gray, and I want to say thank for listening to me. And hopefully this helps in your approach to giving you what you need for making your programs more sustainable and more trauma-informed. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michaela. And I just really appreciate you sharing your experience with us and helping us see what that can be like to be in a situation for those of us who maybe haven't experienced something like that, where like your example you mentioned in the beginning, and I just really appreciate your honesty. It's wonderful to get to see how we can move past these kinds of stigmas and to love and care for our friends and relatives better. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I do want to, somebody had a question. Yes, we've got a lot of great comments here too, but I wanted to make sure there was a question about, I'm going to go back to slide 21.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to move the slide, it's fine too. So whatever you need to do. 21.
Here we go. Okay.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure, and so it looks like, or somebody was asking what PSME is referring to there.
Oh,
I want to make sure
I'm sorry, but yeah, it's physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, the 4 dimensions of most people.
Oh, great.
And so I just threw it as an acronym in there, if you will. So yeah, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. And I really definitely think that all of us carry that when we're going into other experiences, whether we're going to the healthcare provider or a mental health care provider, or whether we're just interacting with people, I think. And to have that impacted, by words or smirks or, or direct behavior can definitely get those out of harmony. And we always try to maintain that harmony in our daily lives with prayer, with support. And so being mindful that, when dealing with individuals of all sorts, that we, because our words can kill eventually. Our words can definitely denigrate and definitely, but it can also be utilized to help support the harmony, support the physical, mental, and spiritual, and emotional. So instead of utilizing your words for negativity and your actions for negativity, utilize them for promoting health and promoting wellness and promoting connectedness instead of that, and trying to reverse what all that happened perhaps in a slow, successful manner, I propose.
Yes, that's wonderful. Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective, and thanks to all the great comments. There were a lot of wonderful ideas, just thoughts being shared about how to, organizational behavior has to reflect acceptance, understanding, knowledge, non-judgmental, and be aware of bias attitudes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Healthy organizations foster healing and wellness for staff as well as clients. That's right, yeah. We are traumatized individually. Even in a group experience, we heal together. It's great.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Really
there was, I think, I can't see the questions right now, and so there was something about gender fluidity. There was a question at the end there.
Yes.
I'm missing a
Okay.
number of them, I'm sure. But so if I did,
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. But please email me if we're running out of time. So we have 6 more minutes, I think.
Yep. And Michaela, I think you should be able to see them if you click. If you're still in full screen, if you go up to the top of, there is that full screen button, and then hopefully you can see them. But I'll read this question out. Can you address gender fluidity and whether this influences younger or young people more than those over, say, 35 years? Your perspective and experience.
Okay, so I say yes. I think gender fluidity definitely impacts more of the younger generation. Those of us who are older seem to find a little more solace in being, when I say older, I'm like 40 plus. So those of us who are older in that generation may not have a lot of experience in that, and therefore we don't have a lot of gender fluidity happening in our current circles. So as a transgender woman, I feel more comfortable in that particular role, and self-identifying as that. Younger generations, again, fluid, and I think what the best approach to do is just, if you're unsure, just ask and maybe that could be the initial, at your initial interaction, your initial meeting, if you're a provider, ask, how do I identify? How do we identify today? How do you identify today? What are the pronouns that I can utilize when addressing you? What is the name that that you'd like me to address? Okay, great. All right, and be mindful that it could possibly change the next time. And the next time, partners could be different. The way they refer to themselves could be different. They could say, I want to be referred to as a they instead of he, she, a ze, or whatever. Just again, establishing that, and just saying at the outset, I'm sorry, I may fumble, I may mess up, I don't mean to insult you, it's just this is all new to me. And being able to say that, I think, automatically allows a person to relax, allows a person to be able to say, okay, I can actively engage this person, I feel a little safer with this person.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say something too about that. I wonder, it does seem like while there's, because the kids that are growing up now are growing up in a much different world than the one we did. Michaela, very, very close to your age too, and I think it's really great to see how much freedom there is, because I think our generations and the one before us had to work so hard for acceptance, and not only like among our peers, but for people who don't identify, as straight cis, and so it's really been a process for, just whether it's like external transphobia or internalized trans and homophobia. So it's wonderful to see. I mean, I'm so inspired by young people, and I think it's made me, even at my age, think, like how do I see myself, even though I identify as a cisgender woman. I think it's made me question like how I present and the choices that I've made, and I think it's really wonderful that that's our world is opening up to that a lot.
Exactly. I think you can encourage people, if you have limited familiarity with some stuff, like I know that it may not be passé, it may not even be recommended, but look up a TED Talk. TED Talks, I think, are so informed, and you get real perspective of individuals who are good presenters, but also know how to present a coherent thought. And yeah, I think definitely, if not listening to the people who are around you and know you, and you just kind of want to get an idea, perhaps looking up TED Talks to just see how those discussions have taken place already. That's just one bit of advice.
Wonderful. Looks like we have a few more comments or questions coming in, so I'll while we're wrapping up, I just wanted to let people know we have recorded this session, so we'll be sharing the recording with you in the next couple of days. We'll also send the handouts along with that. And we had some questions about CEUs, and so
Okay.
I wanted to make sure we'll send out a CEU request form, and we've been trying to simplify that process. So hopefully we can make that as simple as possible for people. But watch for that in our follow-up email that comes out as well.
Great. Thank you.
Like what Carolina said about saying your pronouns first, and that's I really like that because then you're not putting someone on the spot too about oh
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure like I don't know how to refer to you, but I really like
Mm-hmm.
being the one to offer that first. That's great.
Yeah, and I think also just keeping in mind, because I know in Navajo we have a term called "ka," and so it's a little more difficult sometimes to request that happen because that determines so many social relationships, and so being mindful that complexity is there, especially when dealing with Navajo. And maybe it may or may not be a situation that anybody there needs to deal with. But yeah, in my previous experience, that's what has been said to me before. So just so you know that be mindful of the culture with which you are interacting with, and if you're a person who is from that culture, it might be a little more of a challenge. But totally learnable, totally um, um, feasible, I believe.
Wonderful. Yeah, again, I want to thank everybody for your interaction and comments and conversation and being a part of this and joining us today. And Michaela, I just want to say thank you again to you for your wonderful teaching and for
Thank you.
opening us up to a really lovely discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time, your effort, and whatever work you're doing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, we can interact at some point in our paths on this journey. So take care, everyone, and be safe. And you're my thoughts and my prayers. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, and yes, I wanted to just say that we, from our staff too, we just wanted to send love and hope and prayers out to everyone in the community. It's a really difficult time right now, and we want you to know that we are praying for all of you and hope that you're safe. And we hope that we can make this a safe place for everyone who lives in this country. And yeah, I just want to thank you all so much and hope you all have a great day. So thanks again.
Thanks again.